All right, what's up, Twitch chat and YouTube? So after a few months of not playing Magic like at all, enjoying a nice little break, I decided to run through a couple leagues today with Grixis Shadow with AspiringSpike's new Underworld Breach tech. He posted a video a few days ago of trophying with this deck, so figured we'd run it through its paces, see kind of how it performs. Some of the notable changes off of the stock shadow list running around are the 4 lightning bolts instead of like 4 unholy heat. Really synergizes well with Underworld Breach. We have late game like play a breach, maybe get 6, 9 damage off lightning bolts. Doesn't seem too out of the question. Um, Single copy of Terminate in the main's fine, but other than that, the rest of the core of the main deck is pretty stable. You'll see no Croxes, but since they do kind of have a nombo with Underworld Breach, but you still have Ledger Shredder, Dragon's Rage Channeler to help fill up the graveyard. Shadow, Thoughtseize, Synergies, Drown Lock, Expressive Iteration is kind of your valuable mid-range tools. So not too much different there. In the sideboard, we've got a single copy of Invasive Surgery, great for like the Rhinos decks, for living in, stuff like that. If you got Delirium, it just like surgically extracts all copies of a sorcery that you counter. We've got 4 copies of Spell Pierce, again, like Rhinos and living in any small non creature or low to the ground non creature spells. 3 copies of Dress Down. I think I've seen a bunch of people playing against like the Bant Ephemerate decks recently. I know people were asking about it in Spike's chat. 2 Alpine Moon, 2 Terminate, 2 Pithing Needles, and Gigantha is our companion. Since our mana cost is pretty low to the ground to take advantage of these breaches. Bolt was MVP in Spike games more than once. I believe it. Like, somebody asked about it in the Discord the other day about Underworld Breach and Shadow. And, like, we've tried it in the sideboard once or twice, but it always felt really mana intensive. And if you're playing a bunch of Underworld Breaches, you basically have to play a bunch of Lightning Bolts. Because, like, Bolt and Mishra's Bauble are going to be your 2 best cards with Breach, like, by a mile. Every now and then you'll have value breaches of, like, oh, let me breach, get back a shadow, Thoughtseize you, kill off a dude, and, like, it'll feel really good. But Bobble, with the card advantage off Bobble and the actual damage off Lightning Bolt as a win condition, are like the things that really put Underworld Breach over the top there. But we'll keep an eye out for how many times Breach is like a value card versus how many times it's a win condition, since it is replacing like Croxa in the main deck, or Croxa and Dress Down, some combination of that, which is often like actually killing your opponent. So we'll keep an eye, see what happens. Otherwise, let's just go ahead and jump in. Scroll all the way down here and remember where the modern leagues are. Please note, league matches now start upon pairing. There's no longer a confirmation to join. Got it. See some familiar faces on the leaderboard here. Size this. Okay. Die roll, get to play first, reveal our companion. All right. So obviously turn 1 Ragavan's fantastic. Gigantha mirror, so it could be a shadow mirror. I'll definitely be keeping this. So I do want to make sure I've got a bunch of red sources for Breach, so that if I do go for like a Breach bolt line, I've got enough red to take advantage of it. Solemn, appreciate it. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and get a Blood Crypt, play out this Ragavan. Get Get my red source. Get my black to pair with the steam vents. Got Abundant Harvest. Abundant Harvest revealed Dragon's Rage Channeler. So I'm assuming this is Red-Green Prowess. I think is probably my best guess. Alright, so do I want to Ledger Shredder plus Thoughtseize? If I'm expecting my opponent to have... They revealed Dragon's Rage Channeler. If I expect him to have like Channeler plus Bolt for Ragavan, that could be not really the worst. That's Shadow. Good against Prowess. I want to just throw away this Ledger Shredder. I don't want to get this this Ledger Shredder out of Bolt range. I think I'm just going to ditch the second Shredder. This is the combo deck. Spike played Red-Green Storm. So I'm probably just taking Breach as best card available. Do I care about Breach? Would I rather take like Channeler and see if I can get them to commit to Narcomancer? Best card. Don't overthink it. Spike's a nuisance. Well, Spike's pretty popular on the brewing side. Alright. Do I want to trade Ragavan for a Narcomancer? Am I okay with that trade? Like, I know I'm going to kill the Narcomancer one way or the other. But am I okay offering up the trade? So we know Manamorphose, Bloodstained Mountain, or Bloodstained Mire Mountain, Dragon's Rage Channeler. Kind of okay with it. Yeah. I'm going to offer up the trade. Alright. Mishra's Bauble off the top of their library. So let's start with Ration. Most exciting. Redder to hand. Exile. Shot off the top. Kill this. And kind of want to hold Shadow. I don't want to just like let them freely grape shot down two of my guys by killing the Ragavan and the Shadow. All right. Grape Shot, Bloodstained Mire. And it is rattling off Manamorphoses like a champ. They have played their land. Alright, so this is going to be lethal on our end. We've got Bolt, Exile 3, Exile 3. And land plus the 2 guys they killed. 3 extra mana, so let's just double check before I do anything stupid. 2 for Underworld Breach. Bolt, Exile 3, Bolt, Exile 3, Bolt, Exile 3. Yep. So, Underworld Breach. We got a bunch of red sitting around. 3. You. Done. 3. Done. Good deal. That's why we went aggressive on getting the red mana early. Shadow with Breach seems so strong. That's what we're here to find out. So I definitely want to size this a little bit. Definitely want a bunch of spell pierces. Alright, so Dragon's Rage Channeler, a Narcomancer. I'm pretty sure he cut Ragavans from the deck. Mishra's Bauble, Manamorphose. I know he's got Rituals, Grape Shot, Underworld Breach. Pithing Needle doesn't look like it does much. Terminate. Terminate doesn't do anything that like Drown in the Loch, Lightning Bolt already do, so I don't really want to overload, especially on something that like doesn't interact with either killing them or like countering spells on the stack. Invasive Surgery, most of his deck's instants. That's not really doing too much for me. Trim on like an iteration, maybe trim on a breach just to cut down off the higher end of the curve a little bit. Holy Heat. Stuff I don't want to see a bunch of copies of. That'll be okay for now. See how they sideboard and readjust for game 3 if we need to. This is my first time playing against this deck, so I got kind of the idea of the main deck. Haven't really looked at the sideboard at all, so if somebody in the chat is like yelling at me for not recognizing, oh, they're going to sideboard in XYZ, okay. Didn't know that was a thing to be concerned about. So worst case scenario with this hand would be they go turn 1 Channeler, I go turn 1 Ragavan. They just like main phase Grape Shot my Ragavan, and I don't hit a second land. Do I want to try for something better? Like a reasonable hand, but it's not great. I think I can do better. Let's infect better. Get rid of the watery grave so we can keep up our red sources again. A little bit weaker to like a turn 1 channeler, but like if they don't have the turn 1 channeler, it's pretty solid. So let's. I think I'm going to start on Thoughtseize here. So if they kept a hand with a Narcomancer, I can answer that. Maybe they have Veil of Summer. $2023 and Veil of Summer still being a nuisance. For a Galvanic Relay. They must have another Veil of Summer. Do you have any opinion on Bitter Reunion and Shadow deck? Seems to be one of the more popular new cards people trying out. I have no idea what that card is, so not particularly. They F6'd. Okay. So let's get rid of Galvanic Relay. Or am I just getting rid of Breach again? If they hit a land and they went a Narcomancer, Ritual, Relay for 4, could be pretty bad for me. If I take a Narcomancer, they hit a land, they got Ritual, Breach, Ritual, Relay for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I'm just going to take the Breach. Breach, risk the land. Oh, my stops are gone. Should have bobbled on their upkeep. Bitter Reunion. 1 red enchantment. When Bitter Reunion enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. 1, sack it. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Seems okay. Creativity staple. You get to like ditch an Archon for creativity. Give the Archon haste. Watch that player plays Death Shadow. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Alright, what are we exiling? Foothills and Archimancer empty the ones. Sure. Does this only let you play non-land cards? No, you can play anything. Okay. Have to attack. Are we trading with this? On that 10k after I met you, some of your luck rubbed off on me. I mean, I'm pretty good at giving luck to other people. They have a lightning bolt coming off the top, but congratulations on the 10k. I feel like I said something about it, but maybe I didn't. Yeah, let's go ahead and trade off here. I know I've got a lightning bolt coming up. Dash in a Ragavan, take them off their lightning bolt. We have coming off the top. Bobble. Don't really want another bobble. Help use a go. Back our Ragioli. Spell Pierce's Dees. We know they have a land. In hand, we know a Narcomancer unknown. Already used the relay. They use both of the rituals. There's the land from exile. Sexix, Happy New Year's to you as well. The Narcomancer from exile. Orphos. I believe I just want to spell pierce this. I want to save spell pierce for breach. Just bolt this. No, because if I bolt this, he just goes like play second and Narcomancer. So spell pierce this. Are we trying the Underworld Breach version? We are. Just copy and pasted Spike's list, so it looks awkward, that's why. Sorry, queue for the next RC. Funny to double queue for it. I mean, it's good accomplishment, right? Like, alright. What am I doing here? If I want the land, I'm tempted to just go like Thoughtseize to hand, Swamp to exile. So I can Thoughtseize this other Anarchomancer out of hand and kill the one on board. I think that's what I'm going to do. Going to be an oof for me, dog. That one's a go. OP 5-0 with this list. I saw them post their list. Nice. Like, I watched Spike play like a league with this deck because I was just curious about it. Interesting, I suppose. Have ourselves a little Gigantha standoff. Oh, so close. Alright. Add our own Gigantha. Say go. What do you think about this Breach version? I don't really have too much opinion on it just yet. Like, this is... Alright, so they play Gigantha and die. This is the first match that I've played with it. My initial, like, game one, we won with just triple bolting our opponent off an Underworld Breach, so that was kind of cool. I do like having Lightning Bolt back in a Shadow deck. I think that it's a card that gives you like a lot of stretch that you wouldn't otherwise have, so that's a big positive. But Breach in itself is like a very mana intensive card. So I'm interested to see like how well that plays out in a Shadow deck that normally wants to be like really ground. This hand is pretty bad. If this Underworld Breach was like a Ragavan and this was a fetch land, maybe I keep it, but here we have no blue, no black. We're ways off Drown in the Loch. Underworld Breach is not doing much for us. Yuck. Spike was crushing with this list if I remember right. I think I remember somebody saying he went like 5-0, 10-0 one league and then like got wrecked the second league or something. But I didn't see all of it. Trying to build a Jund Shadow version with it. There's more room for bolts in my opinion. I could see that. It would be kind of interesting to see like the old Jund Shadow with Swift Spear, Mutagenic Growth, Become Immense, and all that, and have like that combo ability of I Underworld Breach, and then played like Swift Spear, Mutagenic, Become Immense, and just hit them for a big shot while only having to spend like 4 mana. Whether that would be good or not, I don't know, but interesting take. Really want a bunch of red sources, but I don't have any red cards at the moment, so that seems a little productive. Dolthy, Croxa, Lightning Bolt. Fact is, in Jund, I find it easy to fit. Ren and 6 is Planeswalker type, and Enchantment for Breach would give Goy for really good boost. I do like Ren and 6 and Jund a lot. I know there have been plenty of people that are against it, but the card has performed very well when I've tried it. No. My hand. So Cliffs is gone. Steam Vents or Blood Crypt more? Blood Crypt. Low on blue overall. Ledger Shredder. I don't really want Ledger Shredder, but it's like better than just a blank draw. So I gotta keep it. Just taking Lightning Bolt. Now, if I take Lightning Bolt, then Dolthy exiles anything that goes to my graveyard, so like my Channeler's not getting any bigger. So I think I just take the Dolphy. It's like opponents going for the Bolt Me Out plan. I don't even think I have Stream Decker updated. Do that real quick. Down. contain them. Load. Set is current. Now, motion deck list. There we go. Yeah, no problem. Oh, am I adding Gigantha and going down to 6? Really don't want to go down to 6 against a known Croxa in the yard and lightning bolts. But I guess if I add the Croxa, or if I add the Gigantha and they have another Croxa, I don't take damage off of it, so kind of evens out somewhere. I have to assume they've found a land by now to get back Croxa. Did the same list man, except I have one more land and one less breach. I fear to go to 18 lands. Like, game 1 of match 1, if we didn't have like double ledger shredder, we were flooding pretty bad with 18 lands. Like this game we mulled to 5, so not really gonna say a whole bunch about it. Alright. Croxa. So we've got Scam, Black Red Scam. I would have thought it was mid range if we didn't see Grief there towards the end, but I'm gonna assume it's Scam now. On the play, Spell Pierce is like pretty solid. It stops all the Undying Evil effects. Stops Blood Moon on turn 3. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, then stops Spyro. Fights over like Terminates and stuff. Maybe I don't want all 4, but put them in the consideration pile over here. Expecting him to bring in some number of like unlicensed hearses. So Underworld Breach looks like it's probably going to be a lot worse. Same thing with Drown in the Lock. He's a bit worse in the mirror. Something like that. Still got to cut one more. Bad do I want an Unholy Heat? Wouldn't bring in Spell Pierce. It's such a bad top deck. It's a bad top deck, but it's like so necessary against like Blood Moons and stuff. Ursh, Blood Moon, Liliana. And if you're like boarding out Drown in the Lock, you just don't have anything else to fight with. But we'll keep an eye on it this game. We'll see if like we want it or we don't want it when we see it, if we see it. All right. Keep some Ragavans. Best hope would be opponent also has the turn 1 Ragavan and we draw second land. Ragavan catches the bolt. Another thing I fear is not having enough removal for big things. Yeah, like every time I play the deck, I really want 2 or 3 terminate. I think Spike's got like 3 terminate in the 75. But I always want more terminates just for like Murktide. Murktide just like drives me crazy. On Dolphy. One time Dolphy. Also accept unlicensed hearse. Got it. Alright. No second piece of 1 mana removal, please. Okay, do we want to hold up the removal or do we want to pray this expressive iteration hits a land? Like, how bad is this looking? If we expressive iteration and we miss the land, we're losing this game for sure. If we don't expressive iteration, we've got terminate or bolt for the monkey, dress down for like a grief. Catch up. Nice. So let's go land to hand, land to exile. Just gonna keep falling behind if you can't play more than 1 spell a turn. I'd agree. I would agree. Best case scenario here would be opponent dashes a Ragavan again to try to hit us and play like a Spyro, a 3-drop. We get to bolt the Ragavan. So we should have put the Bloodstained Mire to exile so we could get a swamp if we wanted it. I'll probably end up being a punt. We'll see. If they Blood Moon, it's a punt. If they don't Blood Moon, it's a lucky break. So it would have been a punt. Alright, OP, what you got? Cast a Ragavan. Okay. I'm getting swamp off this. I want to just get a blood crypt off this. Get the mountain. Black source. Okay. Bad. Back into Dolphy. Fatal push, pretty good here. Do I want to exile something to Fatal Push here? I could Ledger Shredder plus Fatal Push, but I would have to either sack my token or exile the Bloodstained Mire. I think I'd rather just Fatal Push and not exile anything. Wanna buy promotions for my channel? Way. Alright. Now I want to get down Shadow. How do I want to do this? I want to just get the basic swamp and play it out as a 1/1. I want to fetch shock, play it out as a 3/3. I think I'm going to play it out as a 3/3. I'm really hoping that I can catch them going for like a hard cast Fury here and dress down. Fine. What the fuck, a miracle? Wouldn't call it a miracle. We did make the call correctly that they were going to bring in unlicensed hearse. My Ragavan, sure. What's the Pithing Needle for in the sideboard? No idea. Not my list. We're finding out together. I'm just going to play Shredder and pass. DOT Dress Down win. I didn't want to cast Dress Down into like the open mana because if I go into turn Dress Down, like they had the Fatal Push. If I go into turn Dress Down and they Fatal Push my Shadow or whatever, then I just like hit them for 2 and I wasted a Dress Down. That doesn't really get me anywhere. Are you back? I don't know. Like, I'm still in that mindset of I just haven't super enjoyed Magic the last few months. So I don't want to go like crazy playing a bunch if I'm not enjoying it. So fetch shock. This becomes a 6, 7, 8. So if I can't kill, do I want to Shredder plus terminate? One thing I don't understand about the sideboard is the absence of unlicensed Hearst or anything that deals with the graveyard. I mean, I'm guessing the assumption is that there's just less graveyard centric decks around. But I understand that, like, Underworld Breach is a heavily played card at the moment. So give us vintage cube streams in. Well, that still comes down to the whole, like, not enjoying Magic part, right? Like, that doesn't bypass that. Like, I'd probably play, or I'd probably stream, like, every day easy if it wasn't Magic constantly. Or even Magic very much, like Magic one day a week or something. So last turn I didn't go for the terminate same turn because I decided I'd rather hold up the terminate for if my opponent tries to, like, go in on something like the hearse. Like, I think the hearse attacking is a bigger threat than the grief. Especially if my opponent's got something like Evoke Fury, Kill Shredder, Bolt for my face, like crew the hearse off the Evoke Fury or something, and then they're presenting lethal. I can hold up the terminate and deal with, like, the bigger, more oppressive threat. It's vintage cube streams, or an animal cube. I just play cube, like, fun builds. I hate tryharding cube. I'd rather, like, force storm or something and do something fun. Um, I'll just let them hit me for this 3. Good content. It's alright content. They did have the Fury and the red card. So that's pretty funny. How do I want to do this? I kind of want to go for a terminate on the Spyro right now, because if they have an Undying Evil effect and they Undying Evil the Spyro, then I get 2 Ledger Shredder triggers. This is, like, a little more mana efficient. What's my plan here? I could get a swamp breach thing. Nice. Get a swamp, cast breach. If they hers, then I get something between terminate and Ragavan. Triggers Ledger Shredders. If they don't hers, then I get terminate. I think I'm just going to lead with this. I really can't pass till like next turn with that. Go down. Swamp. Breathe. Right? Or by terminating an elemental token. I guess by terminating an elemental token, I have 2 shots at hitting a removal spell to just kill them here. I should probably do that. Don't have any black base removal, so this lets me hit Spell Pierce as well. This is going into the yard. Could have hit that. So attacking, just attacking with a Ledger Shredder. Two blockers back. Like this position. Cards in hand, so if they have like something to evoke. Detsugu consumes all. Okay. Didn't attack with both shredders last turn. go. Graveyards. Destroy all creatures with mana value 2 or less. Hmm. So let's go Spell Pierce this. Why Spell Piercing this? Like, they for sure got another swamp. They'd go down to 1 and tap out. If I terminate and they don't crew, they'll have to deal with the hearse next turn or win. I guess this gives me a chance of them having like an Undying Evil effect. And tapping off of Spell Pierce for this Path of Peril. And I want to use this Spell Pierce to tap them out. So if I top deck like a Ragavan or something, I can dash without having to worry about. No. Worry about dashing without them having an answer. Alright, so Underworld Breach does not do it because of unlicensors, but we boarded out all of our breaches. Gotta. Oh yeah, that kills us. Forgot about that thing flipping. Oh well. It's like the Thought Scour dilemma. Like, oh, do you not cast the Thought Scour because you might potentially flip over like your Shadow and your Gurmag Angler? No, you still Thought Scour because those cards would be lost in the deck otherwise, or they have just as much of a percent chance of being lost in the deck somewhere. Glad to see Mr. Death Shadow back streaming. I mean, a little bit. Like, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I would stream a lot more if I wasn't streaming just Magic. Like, Magic gets so repetitive so quickly. Dogfish suggested some cube streams. Maybe that's something to shake it up a little bit. But for the most part, just like Magic in general. Ugh. Something to do for 2 weeks. Is that how much longer the vintage cube is up? Have you been playing different games? So I play a ton of like Apex Legends not good, but play a lot of it for the fun of it. I've played a little bit of Marvel Snap here and there. As far as just like random other games, play a bunch of Skyrim, Subnautica. We've played on stream before. Um, play a lot of like the Final Fantasy series. All right, let's get us a script and see what you got going on. Looks like it's a what's it called deck? Dominable Creativity. Taking Ledger Shredder, taking the Lightning Bolt for Ledger Shredder, I think's probably the most set up here. Apex is super tough but really fun, right? Like I've been enjoying trying to learn controller a bit. Like I played mouse and keyboard for a while and been trying out controller, so that's been pretty fun to just check out. All right, I want to keep my red count up for breach in case I find a lightning bolt. I'd give you shit if you weren't completely justified about being off of MTG. Yeah, I mean, like, I enjoyed Historic a decent bit when I was playing that a lot more. I thought it was like a really fun, pretty rewarding format. But like Modern, I spent three about 3 months like completely not touching Modern and came back and the format is the exact same. Like the top 4 or 5 decks are the exact same. There's very little new innovation or iterations. Like when I say the format hasn't changed, the format has not changed. And it hadn't changed in like months before that. So just like, okay, doing. Some lands. Not lands. Let's go Channeler, the Wren, some triggers in here. Okay. Not great with Drown, but I have to take it. Gotta try something and break Scourge and Pioneer. That's almost Death Shadow. If there were just like fetch lands or just a little bit more setup in Pioneer, then Scourge probably wouldn't be that bad since you don't have to deal with like Solitude and all that. Solitude, Dress Down. Nothing's going to rotate out MH2 powerhouses. I mean, I'm not expecting them to rotate out, just like something different to rotate in. Not a land. And land. All right, let's think. We just play. We have to just like attack and play shredders that are only real line. Value Breach can potentially draw 4 cards. So they've got Spell Pierce. So if we go for Breach and they pierce, we either have to like not pay for it. Actually, that's probably a good line. Because if they pierce and we just choose not to pay for it, then we can hold up Drown in case they found another creativity or found a creativity effect. And if they let it go, then we bobble a bunch. Yeah, I think I'm appreciative of that line. Spell Pierce, Shocking Watery Grave, say go. See, I haven't played Scam in forever. There's so many people playing it now. I don't even want to touch it. I've just been messing around with Mono Red Obosh. Played Mr. Rodingle's Resolve Scam list for a few trophies. Nice. Yeah, we just played against Scam last round. Cast Ball potentially 4 times. So if that Underworld Breach resolved, we could have gone 1, 2, 3 for Bobble, 1, 2, 3 for Bobble, 1, 2, 3 for Bobble. We could have cast it 3 times, and then if we flipped over a card every time for Channel or Surveil, then yeah, we could have cast it 4 times. Our opponent find another copy of Spell Pierce. Is the question. They did. I guess I could top deck another copy of Underworld Breach. And that wouldn't win it for us, but might give us a shot here. We could Breach, Unholy Heat, kill this. Get a whole bunch of draws off Baubles. Maybe Thoughtseize. Still got a Prismari command in hand too. Gross indeed. That's like this entire deck, right? Is got a whole bunch of Spell Pierces. I've got Teferis and Ren and Sixes. I got Leyline Binding now because that's a totally reasonable Magic card. Pithing Needle's like pretty low on my list, but at least want to consider it. Is the what is it? Orvar Tech or whatever still running around? The blue dude that like copies Archon. We're still trying that. 50 ticks now? Jeez. Go away for a minute and this is what happens. Do I want Alpine Moon or Pithing Needle? Like, I know plenty of people that'll say, don't bring in Alpine Moon against this deck. And I get it that, like, Alpine Moon doesn't do a ton. But a lot of times you just want it to, like, delay for a turn or two. And I think Alpine Moon's, like, reasonable at doing that part. It's not going to be a win condition, but you don't really want it to be a win condition. You just want it to save your ass for a turn. Still see people dying to Emrakul. Gotta respect the jukes. What over here? Spell Pierce, Creativity, 3 lands. We are a ways off of Delirium. They find another Spell Pierce off the top. They find a Veil of Summer off the top. Bruh. Bruh. Michael, why haven't you been playing Modern in 3 months? Mine. Because this looks so enjoyable from the outside looking in. Pack it up, get back to the cave. Like, I'm telling you, I would enjoy streaming a lot more if I got to break up these days with something else, but like Magic is so constructed right now to let people have fun. And like counter spells and hand disruption aren't fun. So they just do whatever they can to like keep those things from being functional. And that's all Death Shadow has going for it is counter spells and hand disruption. Get out of here. Got all these Teferis and Veil of Summers. Everything's 5 color. It's a scary world out there. Scary, scary world. I guess that's why Historic was like such a breath of fresh air for a minute. No Veil of Summers, no Wrenn and Sixes. Leyline binding. Close. Get for dashing Ragavan. Just like playing that fucked up card with all the crazy abilities. Shadow Heart. The greatest card I've ever gotten to play with. I can never play in paper. That makes me sad. Ren. Mari command. I think there's really anything I want to do with Prismari command. So let that one go. Rather just like not tap off of surgery and Pearson Bolt. Yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about with Alpine Moon. Is like I'm not expecting it to win me the game, but if it can just stop my opponent from killing me for just like a turn or two, then maybe I can close out the game. Sorry, Giganta. Nope. Want to kill my my channeler? You're more than welcome to. I guess if you guys to kill the channeler, I can always just like bolt them and save it. Yeah, that's fine. This adds instant to my yard, gives me delirium. Up the channeler. Survey says. Don't think they mathed that one out. Or no, they probably just didn't have another basic to get. If they had another basic, they could have hard cast an Archon. But here, that was not the case. Run it back. See what happens. Alright, double Alpine Moon. A little bad. I also really hate hands that start with Channeler in this matchup, because if you go, they go turn 1 land, you go turn 1 Channeler, they have turn 2 Ren and 6 down tick, you're so ungodly far behind. We can probably work with this. Lands. Depending on what our opponent does, this might be an all-in on Shadow game. When I say all-in on Shadow game, I just mean like bolt ourselves, double Shadow. All in on Shadow. Kind of expect this to just be a Ren down tick. Right. It's like we're psychic. My God, no. Saw it coming. On to Fairy. On to Fairy. Alright. Show me Spell Pierce. And or Veil of Summer. And or both. Guess that could have been worse. Kind of gives off like I have another Spell Pierce vibes. Maybe they don't go for it. What we in the biz call a bunch of Death Shadows. Are we risking it for them not having a creativity effect off the top this turn? I think we can play it slow. I don't think we have to play out a Shadow right here. They hit us, they make Shadow bigger. Yahtzee. This is how you're supposed to Shadow. Can't tell me otherwise. Blood Crypt we didn't know about, so their hand is Bloodstained Mire, unknown. Back in with our Shadow. Toss. Got it. Meyer we knew about. Okay. Yeah. That's right. Block all the shadows. Boss? Fun thing here is if they do have like a hard cast Archon, it does like make a couple shadows bigger at the cost of one of them. Draw. All of our shadows are lethal. Then make the first move. Lightning bolt you. Boo. Alright. Somehow 2-1. We can extend that a little bit. We could have gone for like fetch and shock there on the shadow. But honestly, I think they have fewer ways of dealing with the lightning bolt than they do of dealing with the shadow. Like if I fetch and shock and they go like leyline binding, then I just like lost a shadow for no reason. If I just let them take the 4 and go bolt, then it's like you have to have spell pierce. I can pay for spell pierce. I think Kroxa could belong in this version of the deck. Well, Kroxa and Underworld Breach are like a pretty big nombo, right? Underworld Breach wants you to have like all your cards in the graveyard, and Kroxa wants you to exile all of them. And then like Underworld Breach plus Kroxa is a lot of mana to make your opponent like discard one. Or do you get to keep the Kroxa if you escape it? Or not escape it, but play it off Underworld Breach. What's the text there? Kroxa. Does it say like you only get to keep it around if you escaped it, or you keep it if you played it from your graveyard? Oh yeah, so it says sacrifice it unless it escaped. Kind of want to unholy heat something. What are my thoughts on Rakdos Shadow at the moment? So honestly, I have not played enough like Modern or Magic in general recently to have a good thought on it. So I would not be the person to ask there. Like I haven't played Rakdos Shadow in 3 months. So I don't think I can give like a current up to date opinion on it. Play red black plus exile 3 cards from graveyard. Oh, does Underworld Breach? Oh, it gives it escape for that cost. I didn't think it was giving the keyword escape. I thought it was just like you could cast stuff in your graveyard. That makes sense. As Grixis says, you have to escape it. Okay. But I will say, like, when I played Rakdos Shadow, I enjoy the archetype, or that variation of the archetype. Uh, but for the most part, like, it's completely dependent on how popular cards like Solitude are. If you're expecting a bunch of Solitudes, Rakdos is going to be a really, really bad choice for you. If you're not expecting a bunch of Solitudes, it can be alright. I want Invasive Surgery. Aggressive Iteration. Probably like it. Some of this slower stuff. I wonder what the payoff is for this kind of variation. Murktide, is it Stormwing? Is it well they had Gigantha, so it can't be Murktide. Could be Stormwing. Could just not have one. Let's see. One of those matchups that makes you miss like engineered explosives. It's usually out of decks like Prowess and Burn. Like the hands you lose to are the hands that are just like super creature heavy. 1 drop into double 1 drop into a couple spells, or 1 drop into 1 drop spell into 1 drop double spell, something like that. Usually don't have such a difficult time with like the spell heavy hands. Like if they just have a bunch of bolts and expressive iterations and stuff. Waiting for our opponent to decide if they would like to play the game. Find out momentarily. Maybe they're not. There we go. Alright. This is a weird one. I don't love this hand. Like, it's got a bunch of spells, which is always nice, but love a second land. I guess if I find a second land, like, it's good. How much do I want to put into finding a second land? Second land achieved. Let's go Bolt on the Channeler. If they had a mutagenic growth, it wouldn't be enough to save it. Can crack this to give myself Delirium for Unholy Heat. Fight over an iteration. Yeah, we'll shock in and get this down. Up our terminate. Bright Dragon. Got over there. Iteration, Vapor Snag. Kind of want to just terminate right here. So that they can't save the dragon with a Vapor Snag. Then I am going to add my Giganta to hand. They could like Vapor Snag my Channeler here. But if they do that and untap and play their Giganta, then I just get to like replay my Channeler, terminate their Giganta. And I'm okay with that. No cards in hand. Channeler. There you go. They do still have a Lava Dart in the yard. Drew something and did not play it. We did not play. I think if they drew like an expressive iteration, then they would have played it. I'll eat and ditch the Gigantha. Okay. Start off with Lava Darting me. I guess on the bright side, they don't have a Bolt right now, so an Underworld Breach wouldn't be the scariest thing in the world. Really want that Drown in the Lock. Really don't want to get rid of any of these. Could be lethal next turn with either attack or Holy Heat. Tough one. Spear Channeler. Pass the turn, we win. We attack with both. They've got to block one. We get to bolt them in the face. Oh, yeah. Purple and gray is not unreadable. I'll have to change that. So it wasn't purple for a while. It was something else, but I streamed a different game and the purple background was better for it. So we'll have to change that back. Should be how about like that? Is that any better? Test. Like I think the last thing that I had was Marvel Snap. And whatever background was going on in there was a whole lot easier to see if it was like purple than whatever we had before. I think we had like blue text. This hand is terrible. They kept 7. Gotta ship this like triple shock land, 1-piece interaction, really slow card advantage source. I know it's sacrilege, but I'm going to ditch a shadow and keep the triple interaction. Blame me in the comments later. Oh, don't crack your bauble now. I guess it's probably okay for them to crack bauble. They have mutagenic growths in their deck. Burn, baby, burn. Burn, 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 baby. Manamorphose, no follow up. We're going to take this opportunity to see what our opponent's got going on. Take the Sprite Dragon. Pass. See if they decide to go for like a value breach. Got that a hand. All right, what do we got? Shadow of the Death variety. We know Gigantha, Double Dart, Breach, Unknown, Unknown. Dart me in the face. I'm a little questioning of that sequencing. Why would you play the land before the light up the stage? I guess they've got the read on Spell Pierce, which is fine. They've got Dart, Underworld Breach, Gigantha. Do I want to just drown this? No. Decide to do with this channeler trigger. Top. Happy New Year to the last Shadow Pilot. Apparently not the last if Spike's playing it. Playing it and trophying with it. Expressive Iteration's a pretty good hit for them there. Dart, Dart, Gigantha, Breach. worse and worse the longer this spell pierce sits around. Split spear. Okay. All right. Dart, Breach, Giganta, Unknown. Dart, Breach, Giganta, Unknown. Dart, Breach, Gigantha. That Unknown's whatever they got off Expressive Iteration. Means what? Aside from my fear about not having 19 lands or 18 really consistent on getting at least 3 to 4 lands we need for casting double spells for turn. Breach those requires some mana to cast it, and for casting spells you're choosing from yards. This is why I'm worried for the 18 lands instead of 19. Like I said, I haven't played this list nearly enough to have like an informed opinion on it. So I can't say whether it's a perfect build or anything like that. Like I'm a big fan of lower land count shadow decks, but I'm also a big fan of not having things like Underworld Breach and Croxa and these like really mana intensive cards. I think they're like really counterproductive. See if opponents got their math down pat. Like in my perfect world, my shadow deck has got like nothing but 1-drops. And I'm just gonna take super advantage of being way more like consistent than my opponent. Because once you start getting up to like 19, 20 lands, then you start running more and more games where you're flooding and it's really awkward really quick. Spike mostly used it for value, casting Bobble 5 times, and then oops, I got Bolt in the Yard, deal 12 to you a couple times. Yeah, we've killed an opponent with triple Bolt out of the yard once. But I don't know. I think like to me, I'm really not a big fan of the bobble 4 or 5 times reasoning for playing the card. Like I understand it. That's unfortunate. They got plenty of darts to dart me out, right? I understand it, but I don't think like that is a good enough reason to play Underworld Breach. I think if you're playing Breach, you need to be playing Breach because when you resolve Breach, you win the game. But if you're playing Breach for the sake of like, I'm going to resolve this card to attempt to sometimes effectively win the game, then I personally, again, don't think that's enough of a reason to play Breach. feel like I win the game when I draw 5 cards, though. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. Like, that's going along that line of I resolve breach and I sometimes effectively win the game, right? Because, like, looking at a hand of 2 cards versus 7 cards isn't winning the game, it's just looking at more cards. But, like, a breach that actually gets your opponent to 0 life or 10 poison or no cards in deck, whatever, is like a breach that's actually winning the game. And you probably win a decent portion of those games that you have a breach and draw 5 cards off your baubles, whatever. But it's just not like a definitive win the game. I don't think Peter's saying he's using it for bolts. Like, if you have bolts in your deck, or if you have breach in your deck, you want bolts. So you have that oops, I win sometimes. But I think if, like, you're playing it for bolts and baubles, then you want to be more consistent on that side. And I feel like at the moment it's just not more consistent on that side. Never did. Exactly, I'm not an expert. When the mana curve of Shadow is so low, it's a 2-mana lure, so you can get more out of it if you think about it. Again, like, sometimes it will be. Yes. Like, if you have a an Underworld Breach and you have a bauble and you've got 7 cards in your hand or in your graveyard, or like a bauble and 5 or 6 cards and a Dragon's Rage Channeler out, then, like, yeah, it feels pretty good. Like, you have a reasonable chance of winning that game. And you're going to get a lot of value off of it. But, like, as soon as pieces of that start, like, falling apart, the card gets substantially worse. Like, if you're talking about breach and your only options in the graveyard are, okay, I can drown in the lock to kill something or like terminate or something, then the card's a lot less impressive, right? So I just don't know, like, how often breach is, oh yeah, I'm gonna bobble, draw a bunch of cards first. I'm gonna, like, not do that. To find like a shadow. Like, all right, when I think of breach, one of the things that comes to mind a lot is I've got this deck full of cheap on the curve efficient cards, and now I've added in this card that's not cheap on the curve. And, like, not only do I need more, significantly more mana than the rest of my cheap deck to make this one card work, which is where I think a lot of, like, the discrepancy there comes from. Uh, but it doesn't guarantee that I'm winning. Like, all right, I've got this deck full of 1-cost cards, and now all of a sudden I've got breach in here that's 2 for the breach, plus an additional mana that I need for everything I want to cast off the breach if I don't have a bauble. So now I've got a bunch of 1 cost cards, the occasional 2 costs, and this thing that needs like 4, 5, 6 mana to really like get its full potential. Unless I've got exactly bauble and a bunch of cards in my yard, which is a non-zero amount of setup. I think I'm gonna bolt here because I'm probably okay with ditching Ragavan if I find like a shadow. So like, yes, I agree that Underworld Breach looks good when you're uh, taking advantage of the fact that you have a bunch of cheap cards in your deck. But at the same time, you just have to remember that Underworld Breach like requires you to have a significant amount of a resource that you wouldn't otherwise have because you have such a low amount of stuff in your deck. Like here, I don't have a bauble or anything, so this breach is going to be like a breach for a terminate on Obosh. And is that enough of a reason for me to play it? Well, like, what would the breach be otherwise? It would be a Croxa. It would be maybe like another spot removal spell. Is that my best line? Is breach for terminate the best thing I can do right here? I think so. Like, I think I'm going breach for terminate. Terminate the Obosh. I want to try to keep Delirium. And ditch Drown. And I think I'm going to attack in with both, because if I hit them with Ragavan, I get a treasure token that's going to let me bolt this Samurai token. So I get that. Instant creature. Find a spell. Swift Spear plus a burn spell. Name a more iconic duo. So we would have been dead to that if we didn't attack with the Ragavan. Unfortunately, felt like we had a reasonable chance to come back there. Expecting them to have like a bunch of like Relic of Progenitus post board. Decks love that card. Every card has lower and upper bound. Being a bad snapcaster ain't that bad when Shadow puts so much in the yard. Well, it also has to do with the fact that, like, what's the floor of this card by itself? like everything else in the deck has a reasonable floor of like Dragon's Rage Channeler, Ragavan, Ledger Shredder, Shadow can attack. The floor on Underworld Breach is your opponent's got like anything that hits your yard, or you don't hit enough of your yard and it does nothing. Like, I think the card's good. I just don't know if it's like good enough to take the slot from something that is reliably doing something. But I mean, that's why we're trying it out, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not an expert on a Underworld Breach. I'll tell you about Relic of Progenitus. I'm telling you, mono red players obsessed with that card. Yes, maybe you don't attack with the bird there, and Rag still trades or gets you the bolt. Possibly. Had more fun with Shadow and Breach than I've had in a long time, but I'm not an expert at all. Well, I think that's like how you got to look at it. Like, if you're enjoying the cards, then play the cards. Like, don't give two shits about what I say or what some random dude on the internet says. Like, no, if you're enjoying the cards and you think they're a good addition, then play the cards. But it's always going to come down to that idea of like, I'm going to play the cards differently than you're going to play the cards. So if you're playing in a way that like sets you up for those cards to give you success, then they're going to work a lot better for you than they are for me. Let's get Ragavan out there. Or do I want to get Ragavan? He wants to throw like a spike field hazard at this. It's cool with me. Always a Swift Spear off the top, isn't it? Example, I think 3 breaches are a lot. Usually also just play it to get 2 threats out they have to deal with. I feel like it has a lot of flexibility. Yeah, I mean, like, if that is working for you, play it that way. 100%. Like, if you're seeing it an okay amount in the spots that you want to see it, play the hell out of it. A bolt, you say? Says I. Like, I think that's one of the things that always draws me to like the shadow archetype is there's so many different ways to play the deck that anybody that comes around and says like, oh, this is the right way of playing it, they're wrong. Like, that's the right way for you to play it. Sure. Not for everybody. Sorry, Shadow. On top, so we get one free shredder trigger. Shredder to hand. Well, like it's part of the reason that we always try out different variations, and like we'll have a list that somebody 5-0-10-0s with, and they're like, oh, this is the greatest iteration of Shadow ever. Like this iteration can't lose. And then we try it and we go like 0-4, not even close, like just get absolutely stomped on. We're like, oh my god, what were we thinking? I'm gonna ditch this Shadow. Like I want to kind of want to keep just like a big chunky Shadow. I'm gonna ditch the Shredder. I get that the Shredder has flying, but like they're dying in 2 attacks to these anyway. Like that one extra point's not really doing anything for me. I just want like a beefcake on the ground. Is Mishra's research deck. Mishra's research desk. Sacrifice it. Library, choose one of them. Bolt then. Back with one shredder. Never been able to get the synthesizer card to look good in the mono red list. And it's looked okay. Like I wouldn't call it phenomenal. It seems like Mishra's Bobble 5-8, but don't know what he hits here that like kills me. Bolt doesn't do it because I'm just blocking Swift Spear, Swift Spear. That doesn't do it. That into Bolt doesn't do it. Pillage. Dude's got pillage. I know I saw Magus of the Moon game 1. I think I was expecting pillage. Could bring in Pithing Needle. I'm many pithing needle targets do you need before you're like, okay, bringing it in as a value card? Because we've got Den of the Bugbear, Relic of Progenitus, the Synthesizer, the Research Desk. It's all Castle Embreth. Probably not enough for me to want to, but I don't know. I feel like it's not that far off. They did show Pillage, but Spell Pierces. But like, if my opponent's pillaging a what's it called, pithing needle, like, I really feel that bad about that. Might just get rid of Drown. A Drown or a land. Might be a land, actually. I can only get a basic mountain. Swamp. Talked about it before, but like, I always get a kick out of this deck because they play like so many non-basic utility lands, and they're just on like 4 Blood Moon and 4 Magus of the Moon and stuff. I think it's kind of funny. Let's just go ahead and get our basic swamp out of the way. Experimental synthesizer. It lands off that. It's kind of cool. Love it. Bolt, which means now I get to drown this before damage. I'm just going to hold up Terminate this turn. I'm expecting him to cast this Bone Crusher and have to take 2 to get that off the board. It's okay, because this iteration is going to find me a Death Shadow. Ah. So, we can go... Please don't quadruple bolt me. Pretty good. Gone the other way with that. Oh well. Surveil with the channeler first and then shredder. Here we are. My bird. Okay. So we're going to have to give up this channeler here. I guess we don't have to. I can always terminate the Spyro. I can trade for the elemental token. I kind of want to just like play Shadow and get get Gigantha. See what happens. We just play Shadow, hold, terminate. Gigantha. A lot worse if they have like Obosh plus Bolt or something. I guess it's not the end of the world either. You. Last card, a lightning bolt. Dash Ragavans, they've got to block something. They're dead to the fetch. N doesn't kill me on the crackback. N plus Bolt doesn't kill me. I think I'm just passing here because, like, I'm A-okay if they spend 5 mana, get back Spyro tokens. You only play this card this turn, the end of your next turn. Bone Crusher, Unknown, Double Synthesizer. It seems like this deck has got a lot of Xerox capabilities, but it's like not Xeroxing into anything crazy. Like, this is pretty mana intensive. 3 mana to see the top 2 cards. Get to play 1. It's like they're going for the Spyro route. Escape tokens, they have to block 2 things. Really a lot changing there. Should play the land. Don't think it really matters because I'm not, probably not fetching and shocking for any reason. But puts a bunch of blockers out there. All right. So let's sack this. Get a mountain and sack this. Trying to see if I can find a removal spell for the Soul Scar. Attacking. It's always one more card down. All right. Let's see what we can string together here. See what you got coming off the top. Hazard. Okay, so I'm at a functional 6. Dash Ragavan. I fetch so that if they like don't block this 2/2 shadow, I can fetch shock, bolt them. That's lethal. Give it to me. Boom. Gotta respect the bolt, kids. But it said GG. Tried to hit him with the GG back. All right. So 3-2. What do we think? I do agree with who was it that said Sexix. I think 3 breaches is a lot. I think I'd rather like cut it down to 2. There were just like a lot of times that I felt like breach was just breach for like 1-2 mana spell, and that was like all I could really do. I think I'd rather have another like setup card for breach in there. What that would be, I'm not sure yet. But just like another card that can pair with it, or like another way to help find it. Even like, I almost feel like I'd rather have a consider or something than another breach. But not entirely positive on that one. Otherwise, the deck just functions like a normal shadow deck, really. Except you have some number of games that you have like an oops, I win button. In the sideboard, 4 spell pierces feels like a lot, but we also didn't see like rhinos or what is it, living end decks that are like really trying to hit something that you can spell pierce on turn 3 or 4. We were seeing a lot of like value pierce games, and so it didn't look nearly as good there. I still think Flusterstorm is like better more often than not. At least for me, it has been. Invasive Surgery, I don't like at all. Like, I think this card is terrible. I get the idea behind it, but you just like don't reliably have Delirium often enough. Not being able to hit any of like the instants is really tough. Like, I just think this card is way too narrow. Dress down if you're expecting enough ETBs, and I think it's fine. It kind of depends on like what you're thinking you're going to play against. Pithing Needle, I think this card depends on like how aggressively you're boarding it in. Like if you're boarding in Value Needle a decent bit, then I think that it's fine. But if you're only having it there for like a couple very specific matchups, then I think you probably do well against those matchups with just like the other stuff that you have available and don't need it. So, but I think if you're wanting it as like a value board in, I'd cut it down to 1. Just my 2 cents there.